Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wayne School of Business TV. Today's show will be about the Brexit, and we will explain you what happened since 2016 and the referendum. But first of all, due to the coronavirus, it's a pleasure to receive you from my house, and I would like to thank all the guests that are with us tonight to continue to participate to this show. So now let me introduce you to our guest. So we'll first have Sherry. Hello, Sherry.
Hello, Tipo and everyone.
Sherry is our specialist on the Brexit here at Friends School of Business, and she will explain us the timeline from the beginning of the negotiation in 2017 until 2020 now. Then we will have Sharon. Hello, Sharon.
Hello, everyone.
Sharon is another Brexit specialist. She is also a geopolitical teacher here at Friends School of Business, and she will explain us the Boris Johnson New Deal. And to finish, we will have two participants from outside of the school, which are specialists from UK and EU, and they will explain us what EU and UK expect. And I will let them introduce themselves.
Hello everyone, hello Thibault, thank you for having me here. I'm Lucas. I'll be the EU specialist presenting what the EU is expecting from this negotiation and what are the potential impacts for the EU.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm Sindhu, and I'm the UK specialist. And I'm here to talk about what the UK expects out of the Brexit and how we could accomplish this. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you, Sindhu. And now, for you to understand the relationship between UK and EU, we will show you a small video that will explain it to you.
It was third time lucky when in 1973 Britain finally joined the European Economic Community, now known as the European Union. France's General de Gaulle vetoed two earlier attempts over concerns Britain's close ties with the US and Commonwealth nations would hamper its full integration. Europe offered first and foremost attractive new trade opportunities at a time when Britain's economy was in decline. Once a member, the country's reluctance to transfer sovereignty and become part of a greater political structure soon became apparent. Among British opt-outs which riled other members, Eurosceptic Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher's successful campaign in 1984 for a rebate on European budget contributions on the grounds Britain reaped few benefits from the Common Agricultural Policy. Britain's late and only temporary participation in the European monetary system designed to create currency stability, the country's defiance over joining the Schengen zone and the euro, and more recently London's refusal to sign a fiscal treaty obliging governments to balance their books. Former Prime Minister David Cameron tested the patience of EU leaders once again in February 2016 when he renegotiated Britain's EU membership. But all his efforts to secure Britain's special status went to waste in June 2016 when the UK voted to leave the EU in a nationwide referendum.
So I hope this video will help you to have a better understanding of the UK and EU relationship. And now, before I let our guests speak and explain you everything, I will just have a few questions on the Brexit for you. People who are following us. So my first question will be, who was the Prime Minister who launched the Brexit? My second question will be, when did the vote happen? And if you have more information about it, you can say them. And the last question will be, can you give me the reasons why UK wanted to leave EU? So now we'll have answers to those three questions. So for the first one.
Hello, everyone. I think the answer will be David Cameron.
Hello everyone, it was on the 23rd of June 2016.
Hi, thank you for having me. I think it was mostly to control and limit immigration from European and non-European countries, from people, refugees and everything, and also to regain sovereignty and the power of their own institutions over the European Union ones. They thought they were losing power in that aspect, maybe, that's what I think.
Brexit has been launched by David Cameron, yes. In 2015 he announced this Brexit after he won the re-election, because it was his promise to the general election. He did it because many people in his party wanted to have this vote. So even if he was not for it, and he maintained his promise, and he did the referendum. So the discussion was when. So yes, it happened in 2016, with in June, and the result was the 52% to leave and 48% to remain. The last question was, can you give me reasons why UK wants to leave EU? As how correspondent, but as how auditor said, it was to control immigration, to have better control of the immigration, to restore the national sovereignty. But there are other reasons, which are to keep free from EU rules, who are very who have a big impact on UK. They also wanted to save the money they are giving to EU to invest it in UK. And finally, they also wanted to take back their chair to the WTO in order to sign their own partnership, their own deals with other countries. So now we will have Sherry, our first speaker, who will explain you the timeline since 2017 of the Brexit.
Okay, let's have a look at the general process of Brexit since 2017. On 29th March 2017, the UK has officially notified EU of its intention to leave the EU. Theresa May triggered Article 50 of Treaty on European Union, which sets out the procedures of member states to leave, to withdraw from the Union, and it starts the 2-year exit process. After 1 year and a half negotiation, on 14th November 2018, EU and the UK reached an agreement on a draft withdrawal agreement. And after that, on the request of the UK, EU has proposed a backstop solution to prevent hard border between the Ireland and North Ireland. Despite the insurance policy and the political guarantee provided by the EU, UK has the House of Commons rejected the agreed compromise package 3 times on 5th January, 12th March, and 29 March 2019. And because of this, the Prime Minister Theresa May has resigned, and Boris Johnson took place. In 17th October 2019, EU and the UK reached an agreement on Johnson's withdrawal agreement with a revised protocol of Ireland issue and a revised political declaration. In January 9, 2020, the UK House of Commons voted 330 to 231 in favor of the withdrawal agreement bill. And in January 31st, the UK officially left EU. Now it's in a transition period. Transition period is due in 31st December 2020. The idea of the transition is to give a breathing space for new EU-UK negotiations to take place. And during this time, most things will keep the same. The UK will remain in EU Customs Union and Single Market. And the UK will contribute to EU's budget, and the freedom of movement and travel will still take place. During the transition period, a lot of negotiations are undergoing. In March 2nd and 5th, the first round of EU-UK future relationship negotiations will take place, and the topic is focused on free trade agreement. And June is the last chance for UK to require extension of transition period, and the negotiation will focus on the UK fishing water and access to each other's financial service market. In November 26, a final trade deal is expected to be done, and it's the penultimate plenary session of 2020. And in December 31st is a cliff edge. If there is a no deal Brexit, the UK will have to take WTO terms, which means tariff on goods and a little practical cooperation between the to smooth the border check. And then the two parties will have to take to make preparation for the economic breakdown, economic fallout in the for the next year, and the UK and the EU is considered to take stopgap measure, which means grant temporary permission for Britain to keep everything as normal for a while. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. And now we will have Shirin who will explain us the Boris Johnson New Deal. So let's listen to her.
So now I'm gonna talk about Boris Johnson, a New Deal. So, as you know, there was no New Deal agreed between the EU and the UK, so Mr. Boris Johnson has proposed a New Deal. First, we have the Custom Union. What is the Custom Union? So, it's mainly an arrangement between EU countries not to charge tariff on product coming from other EU countries and to charge tariff product on product that are coming from outside the EU countries. So first, the UK will leave the EU Custom Union. This means that the UK will be able to strike trade deal with other countries in the future. Legally, there will be a custom border between Northern Ireland that will remain legally in the EU UK, but practically with the EU Custom Union, and the Republic of Ireland that will stay with the EU. But technically, items on that border will not be tested, but tariff will be payable on certain commercial goods. Yet, the real search will be on what is essentially a custom barrier between Great Britain and Ireland, with successful checks being made at Northern Ireland entry points. Taxes would have only to be levied on goods transferred from Great Britain to Northern Ireland that are deemed at risk to be exported to the Republic of Ireland at the time. For personal goods being transited from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, no custom duty will be payable. This protects the shopping online and all things bought for personal rather than commercial use. After a while, a joint committee made up from members of the UK and the EU will determine that goods are deemed at risk. Now, how the custom might work. When taxed goods are paid at risk and do not end up being exported to the EU from Northern Ireland, it will be the UK duty to refund the money. And the Joint Committee would have limit on how much support the government can give Northern Irish firms. The sum will be dependent upon the amount currently obtained by EU Common Agricultural Policy. Now for the backstop has been scrapped. It's mainly an agreement that would cap the whole of the UK bound forever in the EU Custom Union. Johnson has scrapped. This means he should secure a lot more support from his party. And a full stop followed with Northern Ireland remaining affiliated with the EU for a total of 4 years from the end of the transition process. Now we have the Northern Ireland only backstop. Northern Ireland must officially leave the EU Custom Union along with the rest of the UK under the terms of Johnson's new contract. Yet Northern Ireland will have special agreement with the province being subjected to EU jurisdiction in some area, including agricultural, fisheries VAT, and state aid regulations. This means there will be a new border in the Irish Sea. So, no hard border will be between Northern Ireland and Ireland, but a new border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK in the Irish Sea, covering customs and regulation. This will lead actually to substantial new trade costs on both sides of the UK, and the Democratic Unionist Party is opposed by Johnson governing partners. Now the regulation on goods. This rule mainly follows things like the labeling and manufacturing process. Northern Ireland would keep the EU rules rather than the UK rules. The regulation would largely remove the need to restriction on goods on the border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, including food and agricultural products, as both they would be in part of all Ireland regulatory zone. Now for the custom right. Even after Brexit, UK citizens in the EU and the EU citizens in the UK will retain their residence and also their social security right. Freedom of movement rule will continue to apply during transition. This means that the UK national can stay in the EU countries. Anyone who remains in the same EU country for a period of 5 years can after that apply for a permanent residence. Now for the VAT. So, in Northern Ireland, the EU VAT law will apply but only on goods, not on services. This would allow Northern Ireland to have different VAT rate than the rest of the UK, which would not normally be allowed by the EU rules. For example, let's say that the UK decided to reduce the VAT on household fuel to zero. So Northern Ireland would still have to keep 5%, which is the EU minimum. With respect to Northern Ireland, the United Kingdom authorities are responsible for applying VAT. Revenue from sales that are taxable in Northern shall be not passable to the Commonwealth. Now for the final point, which is the future trade deal. The EU and UK will aim to zero tariff deal with unlimited quota. The entire UK and Northern Ireland will be free to sign trade deal. The line in the political declaration that the United Kingdom should consider aligning itself with Union rules in a specific area in any future trade negotiation has been abandoned. And one source also said that the elimination of this, without ambiguous, pledge of cooperation with the EU in the future was the key in unlocking European Research Group support. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, for giving us all this information. It was very important to know that, and it's also very important to understand those information to have a better understanding of what Lucas and Sindhu will explain us just after. So we will now have them speaking, and so we will start with Lucas. And Lucas, could you and Sindhu, could you give me a bit of more information of the background and the expectation of EU and UK, please?
Right. When it comes to the background, it's quite simple, really. The EU is going to conduct a negotiation under the Article 50 TEU of the European Constitution. Basically defines the guidelines through which the negotiation will happen. One key point being that the negotiation should be done in complete and total transparency toward the public. I will cite three important different matters. The first one is that the deal must be global. There will be no partial deal. Another one being that the EU must stay united. And finally, the last one being that we expect this deal will help create a framework for future partnership with the EU.
A little bit of introduction from our side. It has already been well established by our negotiator, David Frost, that the ability to break free from the EU rule book is essential for UK at this point to strengthen its position and was the main essential purpose of the whole Brexit. The UK understands that there's going to be a lot of trade-offs involved, but we're not looking for anything special, rather what just every fundamental independent non-EU country has. And we understand that these drastic measures were sudden and it may have disrupted the relationship between the EU and the UK. However, we're looking for cooperation and we want to come up with a deal where both sides benefit.
All right, and can you give us more information about the political background, please?
Yes, for the political matters, while we respect democracy and UK's will to leave the EU, one really important perk for the Union was to show united front and to ensure that all the members will not want to follow the British path. Therefore, negotiations must be conducted between EU and UK only, and no negotiation can be done with specific Union members. During the process, EU has made it really clear that it wants UK to remain a close partner. However, with rights come obligations. One point that is really important throughout the negotiation is the four pillars of free market access: free movement of goods, capital, services, and most importantly, persons. They are the foundation of the EU, and if the UK do not want to comply to these, it will harden the negotiation a lot.
In relation to the political matters, the UK really aims for a friendly cooperation between the sovereign equals, with both sides respecting each other's legal anatomy. However, it will not abide by EU rules, and UK will not negotiate any arrangement where the UK does not have control of its own laws, and it will not accept any obligations to be aligned with EU laws, EU institutions, or the European Court of Justice at this point.
All right, thank you. And can you tell us more about the citizen rights, please?
Yes, the main topic of negotiation for the EU was and is the citizens, both European and British. The Union wants an agreement that the citizens who already live in the UK and the family will be able to stay in the country and access to the needs without risking to be sent out of the UK. We want to guarantee for them that they will be able to access to the labor market, to education, healthcare, and recognition of diplomas. We want to make sure that the administrative procedures will must be kept simple. In the same time, we guarantee that the same thing will happen for UK citizens and workers living inside any of the 27 members of the EU.
So, to talk about citizen rights, it's absolutely necessary that we protect EU citizens in the UK and UK citizens in the EU and their families. We completely agree with it. However, one of the reasons Brexit came into force was because we did not want a lot of free movement of other nationalities in our country. So while we may allow free visa access to certain citizens from certain countries, we cannot issue employment to EU citizens any further. However, we assure you that those who are already in the UK with work permits will continue to have their work permits. However, issuing new work permits for upcoming EU citizens might be something that we may have to discuss. And the implementation and the application of these terms will be overseen by an independent authority equivalent to the European Court of Justice. And hopefully, we will find a balance.
Thank you for this answer. We have no more information about the civil rights. And could you both tell us more about how financial will be settled between UK and EU, please?
Well, it's actually rather simple. The EU requires the UK to finance the Union according to an engagement involved between the EU and the UK before the Brexit. It's not a tax, it's not a bill, it's a financial contribution that has already been agreed upon. It should be done as a single contribution. The OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, an independent British organization, has evaluated this at about £32.9 billion. The settlement includes the multi-annual financial framework, which is the EU's long-term budget contribution, but also contributions to a European Investment Bank or other. These are the resta liquide, fees that have been agreed upon but not already paid. Finally, there will be the other liabilities, mainly financial contributions. In exchange, the UK will access to some actions, some shares. They will access to financing program as well, and they will receive contribution from other countries.
So while the UK does realize that there are financial obligations that have to be met, and there are financial obligations that needs to be discussed and negotiated, we are very happy to have a negotiation over it, but we will not oblige to any terms or amount that has been imposed on us by the EU. However, we would like to negotiate and see where we can find a proper deal.
All right, perfect. And we also know Ireland is a very important subject. And could you have some words about it, please?
Yes, the Irish topic is quite sensitive. The EU wanted really clear that it will respect the Good Friday Agreement, which roughly stated, officialized that the Irish government accepted Northern Ireland as a part of the UK until the majority of the Irish people, both Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, decided that they wanted to see a reunited land. Therefore, a hard border must be avoided, and EU will accept bilateral agreements between UK and Ireland as long as they comply to EU law.
UK is not looking for a hard border between Northern Ireland and Republic Island. However, there is a negotiation being conducted in full respect to the Northern Ireland Protocol, and the results will probably tell us how this goes.
Thank you. It was a very interesting information. And now we have a question about the regulatory, the law, and the environment that will take place after.
Yes, well, the EU is expecting the situation quite simple, really. In a situation of disputes, a common ground must be decided beforehand regarding which law should be used. EU officials agreed that we should use the EU Court of Justice whenever EU law is involved. Furthermore, one really important matter is that the EU keeps its sovereignty when it comes to regulations and regulatory framework.
For the UK, it is a central vision for us to have a set of laws that suits us to claim the right that every other non-EU country has as well. UK will not take part in any EU programs or agencies that puts the country under the jurisdiction of the EU court. The UK would establish its own independent body overseeing the rules, and it would work in cooperation with the European Commission. However, it will not work under the European Commission.
Thank you. And a very important question is about the free market access. Can you tell us more about it, please?
Yes, free market access. EU has been negotiating a lot inside, and we finally kind of come up to an agreement. There must be no sector-to-sector agreement. Free market access must be done on all of them or none of them. Furthermore, a free market access cannot be as good as the single market already in place inside the EU. The EU must ensure its members a competitive advantage. Therefore, businesses and others will be facing harsh consequences of UK's decision, both inside the EU and outside. It will come with procedures and custom controls as it is for Norway or Iceland. Third country businesses will also not benefit the same VAT returns. There's also two really important points. All the imports of live animals and products of animal origin will face EU border control. It's going to be a challenge, especially with no border in Ireland. And finally, a regulatory framework complying to a EU law must be decided in order to set what the trades can be and to set the background in general.
All right. From the UK's perspective, the UK wants a comprehensive free trade agreement, the same as Canada. The UK is not looking for anything ambitious. However, it is willing to settle for a bare bones trade agreement with a series of side deals to cover up the remaining issues.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me a chance to explain a bit more about what the EU is expecting and how the negotiation would be conducted. And thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for having me here to explain what the UK wants to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas, and thank you, Sindhu. It was very interesting to listen to you. It's now the end of this show, so I would like to thank you, all of you who followed us, and I would like also to thank Shirin and Shiri, who helped us to have a better understanding of the Brexit. So thanks to all of you, and I will find you next week at the same time for another Brexit show.